In the last lesson, we talked about when the right time is to focus on resurrection as an impactful area. What we really want to do is isolate and focus on this group of dormant users, users that have established the habit, but then at some point become unengaged, but haven't been unengaged for so long that the probability of resurrecting them is so low that the costs outweigh the benefits. So if we dove into this dormant state, we can think about it in a few different subsections. So dormant users are ones that have established the habit, they were engaged, but then become unengaged. But there's two types of dormant users, voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary dormant users are ones where the users make a conscious choice not to engage in the product anymore. Involuntary users are ones that disengage due to some reason that wasn't necessarily a conscious choice. We can also think about voluntary in two different subsections. Voluntary satisfied users that make a conscious choice to not engage because it did satisfy their demands and needs, and voluntary unsatisfied users who make a conscious choice because it didn't satisfy their demand or needs. In this lesson, we're going to focus on this group of users, involuntary dormant, users that disengage due to some reason that wasn't a conscious choice. We focus on involuntary users first because they tend to be easier to resurrect versus voluntary dormant users. So when thinking about the psychology of these users and comparing it to other groups, we have at-risk users that are still lightly engaged in the product but are at risk because they show a declining state of engagement. And we also have voluntary dormant users, users that aren't necessarily engaged in visiting the product anymore. Involuntary users live somewhere in the middle. We might still have some product and notification engagement. So while they haven't formed a conscious choice not to use the product anymore, it is going to prompt the question if they want to keep using the product. There are three categories of reasons why somebody might become an involuntary dormant user. The first is a product issue, something like technical bugs, like users getting logged out, switching devices, or a user switching emails. To show you a couple examples, we can consider the product HubSpot Sales Professional. At one point in our lifetime, we had a flattish retention curve. It wasn't perfectly flat, but the trend towards zero was pretty small and took a really long time. So we knew that with some optimizations, we might be able to improve retention to a perfectly flat state. So we dug in and collected a lot of qualitative research about the reasons why users were going dormant. We would contact them as quickly as possible as we detected them in that dormant phase, and we'd ask them why. What we found was that a pretty big chunk of this was people going dormant for involuntary reasons. Things like the Chrome extension disappeared, or people getting logged out, or people unchecking the track email box and then forgetting to recheck it, or people switching computers and therefore browsers. Once we understood these specific involuntary reasons, we were able to deploy very simple and effective product and notification strategies in order to get them back. And as a result, we were able to improve the retention curve. Another big area that falls into this category is the logged out state. Now, at volume, the logged out state can be one of the biggest areas of optimization. And that's because when a user is coming back and resurrecting a user, their intent is already low. So when we have low intent like this, or the switching costs are really low, the more friction we have in these types of logged out experiences, the more this can cause kind of involuntary churn. The second category of involuntary dormancy is leaving the company or the market or making some other change where they can no longer use the product. This happens very commonly in B2B products where you might have a lot of trading volume or a lot of turnover on things like sales or marketing roles. The third type of involuntary dormancy is payment failure, such as an expired credit card, limit reached, or an address change. There's a number of strategies that we can deploy to help prevent this. Things like persistent notifications within the product strategy, so blocking usage of the product until they update their credit card. We can also deploy notification strategies in order to make it extremely simple to update payment information. We can compare this Amazon Prime notification where I have to go through 6 steps in order to update my credit card versus something like Squarespace where with one click I can update my credit card. We can think through a number of other payment strategies. There's 6 different payment strategies to recover involuntary users. We can think about optimizing payment strategies. Things like PayPal or ACH can help us retain users for a longer period of time. We can also optimize the frequency and cadence of retrying credit cards. There's also a number of account updater programs, things that automatically update expired credit cards for your users. Things like reducing restrictions, removing zip code, and other verifications that trigger failed payments because we already have an established history with this user. We can also think about rotating through different credit card processors. Different credit card processors have different rates of success. And finally, we can make sure that we have all of our settings like the proper flags and recurring settings around specific types of transactions. The key when thinking about these involuntary strategies is that we want to think not just about after it happens, but try to be proactive. How do we think about proactive strategies before the payment failure occurs? And then, of course, when it happens, and then afterwards as well. In the next section, we're going to talk a little bit about resurrecting voluntary dormant users.